Hello, everyone. How are you today? This is Embracing Your Essence on Lilydale Radio. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we are going to be talking about feeling spiritually good enough. But before I get to that, let me tell you a little bit of some details here. I'm Colleen Vanderzijden. I am a registered medium here at Lilydale Assembly. Lilydale Assembly is the largest spiritualist community in the world, and people from all over the world do come here to study and take workshops, to visit with the mediums, or just to have the peace of the community. You can connect with Lilydale Assembly, see what's going on at lilydaleassembly.org, and follow Lilydale on Facebook. Lilydale Assembly Incorporated is the official page. And as I said, I'm Colleen Vanderzijden. I'm a medium. I talk to people on the other side, and I'm also an intuitive life coach. On this show, Embracing Your Essence, I always talk about a way that you can live a better life, a way that you can be the best version of who you are. And today, as I said, we are going to be talking about, are you spiritually good enough? And you can connect with me at ColleenVanderzijden.com or quick link, psychicmediumcolleen.com. And as always, follow me on Facebook, Colleen Vanderzijden, medium and intuitive life coach. So have you ever felt attacked for not having the right belief system, or feeling as though you're not good enough as a spiritual person? Other people's comments may have made you feel unsure about what your spiritual path should be. We are, as I said, going to talk about feeling not spiritually good enough, but also within that, we're going to talk about a simple trap that people frequently fall into when they're on the spiritual path. And this is a trap that can stop us from becoming our best spiritual self. Feel free, as always, to share the show, to leave comments. I will respond as soon as I can, of course. So I was reading a Facebook post the other day where people were discussing the pandemic, as usual, and fear. I'm sure you've seen some similar posts where people will state that if you're being cautious about the pandemic, you're living in fear. What normally happens is someone will post something along the lines of something they've learned about the virus and to tell people to be safe. Invariably, someone will respond that implies that you're totally living in fear, and they'll say something like, I refuse to live in fear. The implication being that somebody who is making efforts to be healthy, to stay healthy, is living in fear, and spiritual people don't live in fear. This post I saw the other day on Facebook, participants were all spiritual people, because those are the people I have on Facebook generally. And it was very interesting to watch the comments back and forth of people saying, well, I'm not living in fear, but I'm still being careful, blah, blah. Now, it's interesting. Remember, there are two kinds of fears. One is the irrational, over-the-top fear, where we are influenced to such a point that we could be paralyzed. It could be a phobia. It could be believing a tiger is going to attack us when we live in a place where there are no tigers, something a little bit on the irrational side. That kind of fear is a paralyzing fear, and that kind of fear can be addressed with a good therapist who can help you deal with that. The other kinds of fear is a healthier fear, one that doesn't rule our lives, but where we take the concerns or the potential outcomes as a way to be prepared. We take precautions. Every day we take precautions to protect ourselves from various things. We wear a seatbelt in the car. I hold a railing when I go down the stairs. We pay attention to the traffic around us when we're driving. There are lots of different ways that we use fear in a healthy way. It doesn't paralyze us, but we use it to make decisions using common sense, really, to address potential problems. If you're not secure in your spiritual beliefs, you're learning, you're just on the path, and you're trying to figure out what your spiritual beliefs are, when you see a post or hear a comment from somebody who minimizes how you feel, minimizes your concerns or your fear of the virus, you might start to feel attacked. You might start to feel like your beliefs are not good enough and that you as a person are not spiritually good enough. You might start to doubt your beliefs and what you believe to be true. Now, interestingly, along with this, I refuse to live in fear statement, is I also saw this argument that if you keep your vibration high enough, you will not catch the virus. I've heard this from some people. I've seen it posted as well. One post I saw said that the virus vibrates at a certain hertz level. Okay, sound and everything vibrates at a hertz level. But they were talking about the virus being at a certain level. And my first reaction was, how did they measure that? Did somebody really take some kind of device someplace and measure the vibration of the virus? I don't know about that one. So I digress on that, but that was a first curiosity for me. But then they stated that if you had a higher vibration, the virus wouldn't affect you. Now, granted, there is much to be said for a positive attitude and doing those things that raise your vibration, expressing love and gratitude, being creative, all of those things. And we all know the negative effects stress can have on our body. So our mindset is important in terms of how we're living, and it can affect our health. However, even with all this information that we know, the tone of these arguments is, if your vibration is high enough, you won't get sick. So if you're living spiritually enough, you won't get sick. If you're living in fear, obviously your vibration is low, and so that's why you're going to get sick. The tone of this is all that it implies that if you do get sick, or if you're taking precautions, that you did something wrong. It implies that you're not spiritually good enough. Your belief system is wrong. If you were more spiritual, you could raise your vibration so you don't get sick, or you're not spiritual enough to be fearless, whatever it is. This, of course, this idea of not being spiritually good enough based on vibrations, fear, all of those things, can also apply to every other situation in your life. Any other situation where you might have a fear about a possible outcome. There are some common misconceptions out there about being on a spiritual path. One is that if you're on a spiritual path, you can control every aspect of your life. Some believe that if they are spiritual enough, they'll protect themselves from illness, pain, and grief. Some people believe that if they experience something painful or uncomfortable, that they can choose a spiritual solution, that there is something they can do that will actually bypass the effects and the emotions with their high vibrational living or positive affirmative thinking. So they believe if their vibrations are high enough and they are working in positive affirmative thinking, that they can bypass, totally skip over the effects and emotions that come from something that's painful or uncomfortable. Now, we live in a human existence, right? So, and having a great attitude will help you, definitely. It definitely will help. But it's not going to stop you from experiencing pain, illness, grief, loss, all of those things. It's not going to stop you from experiencing this. And so sometimes when people are thinking that they can bypass these emotions because they're spiritual enough, in their mind, they think that's the appropriate response. What happens is there's an unintended consequence of believing spirituality is going to protect you. Believing in that is that we don't face the emotions of grief, or we don't pay attention to the physical laws that are a part of our human physical existence. We are living a physical life. We are governed as well, not only from the spiritual perspective, but also from the physical laws that there are. So with this unintended consequences, we kind of skip over the unpleasant parts. We're not paying attention. So we might deny or ignore anything that is unpleasant because we're striving for a more enlightened perspective. And when we strive for that, we believe we should respond a certain way. So we skip the emotions. This is actually called spiritual bypassing. John Welwood coined this phrase. I don't know how long ago, but he coined this phrase, spiritual bypassing. And what this is using spiritual ideas and practices. Okay, we're using what we think we're supposed to believe as spiritual beings and how we practice that belief to sidestep. We're using these ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished business. In other words, we're not necessarily ready to move on, but we're using these spiritual ideas and we're sidestepping this unfinished stuff. People also use spiritual bypassing to shore up a shaky sense of self. If we don't believe we're good enough, but we want to be spiritual, we might jump ahead to what a spiritual reaction would be, thinking that's what we should be doing. We're not secure yet in what we truly believe our spiritual beliefs are. We can also use it to belittle our needs and feelings. So we dismiss them, we ignore them, we deny them. To put it another way, spiritually bypassing, when we do this or when others do this, we aren't facing the truth of ourselves, and we're denying the truth of the physical world as well. So people will use spirituality as a method to bypass the hard work on themselves. We might deny how we really feel, or thinking that to be spiritual means we need to rise above the problems purely with spiritual intention alone. We think in our minds that's going to make us more enlightened. We think we're more enlightened if we don't have the emotional reaction or the need to use common sense when dealing with a pandemic, for example, or any other situation where common sense would be necessary and safety is a necessity. So some people, when they spiritually bypass, what is happening, well, actually all people who spiritually bypass do this, is we try to be more enlightened. So we respond in the way we think we should respond, but we aren't doing the hard work to learn more about ourselves, to learn more about what we need to know. We have a tendency to then deny or skip over the human reaction. We believe that feeling badly or being scared isn't a spiritual response. We don't label it as such. So we choose to not face it, and we're skipping it. So many of us have done this at some aspects of in our lives. When we first start out on the spiritual path, we're really eager. We want to learn, we want to grow, we want to experience so many things, and we want to respond in that spiritual way. But when we first start out, we may not realize that there's a lot of hard work there. That we have to really dig deep into ourselves, face our shadows, find out who we really are. We have to go into those emotions, and we don't want to. So when we do this, part of spiritual bypassing is also what we can call emotional bypassing. We are emotionally bypassing what we need to be facing instead. Now, this is a trap. Because we believe our response needs to be more enlightened without negative emotions, what happens is we are limiting our spiritual growth. Without accepting and embracing our emotions, we diminish who we are and how we experience our lives. We are not living in the totality of who we are. We are not loving all aspects of ourselves. When another person accuses you of living in fear because you are taking into consideration the fact that a virus, this is a fact, the virus does not discriminate based on your level of spirituality. When somebody accuses you of living in fear or that your vibration isn't high enough, they're spiritually bypassing as well and projecting their beliefs on you. They're making you wrong. They're telling you your spirituality isn't good enough and you obviously don't know enough about it. And because if you were more evolved and enlightened, then you wouldn't be concerned about the virus. If someone is projecting their idea of what your spiritual path should be, whether with this situation that I'm using as an example or any other situation, or they're dismissing your concerns for whatever it might be, as not spiritual enough, or accusing you of living in fear, applying your vibrations not high enough, anything like that, and you start to feel like you're not good enough, don't accept it. Part of being a spiritual person is owning your power, recognizing you have the choice to accept or not anybody else's perception, opinions, or ideas about you. You also get the choice. You have the option, the responsibility, and the ability to make the choice of what's right for you. Now, again, I want to make sure I'm not dismissing the ability you have, and we all have, to influence our bodies by being aware and making conscious choices to raise our vibrations. Okay, we want to live as the highest, but sometimes, we live in the human existence, the physical laws. Sometimes, yes, we do get stressed out. Yes, sometimes we don't get enough sleep and we get tired, and so our immune system could decrease slightly. Sometimes we could be in perfectly good health and still something might come up that makes us feel sick, or we might get sick. If you know anybody who has never been sick in their lives, well, I can't believe it. Some of the most spiritual people in the world have had serious illnesses, and we all are going to pass at some point. So things are going to happen. Now, granted, there are probably some amazing gurus out there, like Jesus, possibly, people of that caliber who have moved into such a state of being that they truly are one with the other side and one with God. But the vast majority of us are not there yet. So we do have to take into consideration the physical laws. So again, I don't want to dismiss the abilities we have to raise our vibrations, be healthy, all of that. But if you have a fear or you get sick, it really has nothing to do with you not being spiritual enough. It doesn't have anything to do with that. One of my most favorite spiritual teachers, Debbie Ford, had cancer. She ended up dying, I think, at 57 of cancer. And right before she died, she told her friend, please tell people that they do not cause their own illness. It's a ridiculous notion that creates so much needless pain. And she went on to say, all illness, including my cancer, is an invitation to love ourselves more. The truth is, that's what life's all about anyway, learning to love ourselves more. Those are profound words. Debbie Ford, I really admired, a beautiful person, had taken her life situation. She had been an addict earlier in life, and she learned so much. And she really worked hard and faced those demons to become a very spiritual person. And for her to say on her deathbed, literally, that we do not cause our own illness and that it's an opportunity to learn to love ourselves more. That's profound. That's an amazing spiritual lesson. The idea that some people have that if we have fear, that or we cause our own illness because we aren't spiritual enough, is not loving ourselves. It's self-blaming, and it's reinforcing that belief system that so many of us have that we're not good enough. And this is just another layer. You're spiritually not good enough too. You don't think you're smart enough? Well, let me tell you something else about how you're not good enough. When we think this is not a spiritual way of thinking. Now, part of the confusion with this is that we as spiritual teachers emphasize we are responsible for everything that happens in our lives. People have not recognized what that message meant. Okay, people took it as we are responsible and we have caused these things. Yes, of course, we can cause certain things to happen in our lives. We know that. But that does not mean we are responsible for something that happens to us physically. We are responsible for our response to it. Okay, we're responsible for the response, our reaction, what we do about what happens in our physical lives. Saying that you're responsible for yourself means you're responsible for how you're living, what your choices are, how you choose to respond, how you try to have that positive, spiritual, vibrationally high life. Okay, this does not mean you're responsible for the things that happen to you. So this is where the problem has come in. People have taken that phrase that you're responsible for how you experience life into you are creating and causing these things to happen to you, which is not 100% true. Yes, if you walk in front of a car, you're responsible for that. You got hit by the car. Yes, you created that one. Good for you. Bad idea. So yes, that. Getting sick? No. Things happen. Now, again, I could take that for just a second more. Of course, if you're drinking obsessively or you're using drugs or something, that is going to have a physical effect on your body, and there will be consequences. That's a whole different ball game. Okay. Yes, you're responsible for what you've done. So, you will have consequences. Yes, you caused it. but it does not apply to everything. If there's one thing I want you to understand about this, you are not responsible if you catch the virus. Your vibration is not low if you necessarily low if you are living in fear, but you're living in fear in that it's informing your decisions. You're using it to have common sense and be safe. Okay, totally different thing. If you're paralyzed by fear, see a therapist. There you go. So two different kinds. This is how life is. Spiritually, if we are blaming ourselves, thinking we've caused something or somebody's blaming us, that is not spiritual. Spirituality, spiritual living, in my perspective, is living in love and kindness and compassion. It's not blaming. It's not feelings of superiority or projecting onto others. Sometimes spiritual teachers, and we can all fall into this too, but sometimes people who haven't really done the hard work, try to help people by telling others that they have the wrong belief system. It's just something they think is helpful. Kind of like, can I give you some constructive criticism? Which is never helpful. When we or others spiritually bypass, we aren't loving ourselves. Like Debbie Ford said, the whole point of everything is to learn to love ourselves more. That's the whole point. That's why we're here, to love ourselves more, because we love ourselves more. We're loving other people. We're living the spiritual life. Loving ourselves is self-care. It's also facing the fears and accepting all those emotions as a necessary part of our spiritual path. We don't want to emotionally bypass. We need to face and accept those emotions. To become enlightened, which is our goal, right? We want to become enlightened. We want to be closer to the source. We absolutely cannot skip the hard work. We cannot spiritually bypass. We cannot deny the difficult parts of life. When to become enlightened, what we want to do is taking action to learn more about ourselves. It's to face the fears, to question what is true for us in our own unique way. What is true for us? What do we believe is our path as a spiritual being? For us, how do we define our spiritual path? You know, we don't want to project that attitude of spiritual superiority. It's so easy for us on the spiritual path to want to help other people. We want to be there for them. And if we're not aware, we can come across sometimes as being self-righteous. In that case, we're not spreading love, but instead we're telling another person they're not good enough. This is quite the trap we can fall into, and it comes out of an eagerness to be a spiritual person. So our intentions are good. Other people's intentions who do this, they're good intentions. We want to help. We want to be spiritually inclined. But we also have to be real. We're living in the physical life. In the physical life, we have the physical laws. We have the spiritual laws. We have the physical laws. We have to integrate the two together. We cannot skip over the physical parts. And in learning to love ourselves more as we're on our spiritual path, it's to be able to look at those moments where we feel like we're not good enough, we're not spiritually good enough, and instead decide, you know what, I'm going to choose to live in love. I'm going to work on understanding that every aspect of myself, including my emotions, my fears, my times where I feel like I'm not quite hitting the mark. Every part of myself is worthy of love. And it's okay and necessary to face the dark parts of myself, the shadow part of myself. And it's necessary that we be open and face the fear and the negative emotions. As we've learned, if we deny or ignore them, what happens is they don't go away. They get stronger and stronger. But if we say, you know what, I'm feeling a little scared today. I'm really worried about what might happen. So if we acknowledge that, then we can, with clear thinking, move forward and say, yes, okay, now I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these action steps, okay? Facing these things helps us learn. It's learning who we are, what we want, who we want to be, how spiritual we already are, and that we're still on that path and we're going to keep going. We don't spiritually bypass in the name of believing we need to act a certain way to be enlightened and live in the spiritual way. We don't do that. We're willing to look at those dark parts of ourselves and say, you know what? Oops, I have stepped into this part where I'm denying my emotions, or I'm projecting on somebody else, telling them what they should believe. And don't hear what I'm telling you today as this is what you should believe. As you know, many of you who watch and listen to me regularly, you know I put the suggestions out there. You do what you want. I have gone through some amazing parts on my path, and I'm always about trying to make your path a little bit easier. So these ideas, take them, leave them, do what you want. Being on a spiritual path doesn't mean everything is solved, doesn't mean you skip the crap, and it doesn't mean it's easy. Sometimes being on the spiritual path, if you're willing to step into it, lots of stuff's going to come up and you get to work on it. What a blessing is that? Because the more you work on, the clearer you get, the higher your vibration is going to be. And then you'll be closer and closer to that enlightened state that you want to be. We have to be careful. Just keep in mind, check in with yourself. If somebody's projecting their spiritual bypassing on you, you don't have to take it. You don't have to. Don't accept it. Don't you bypass the tough stuff as well. Be willing to look at it, because that's when we learn. The path to enlightenment is not by skipping our emotions or our human reaction. It's by facing them so we can learn to love the totality of who we truly are, every aspect of ourselves, because that's what we're here for, is to learn to love ourselves, every aspect of who we are, the dark sides, the light side, every part of it. And we don't skip the tough stuff. I know sometimes we want to skip the tough stuff, and I know sometimes we do have to skip the tough stuff right after something really profound has happened, because we need some space, and that's okay. It's okay to do. So this is fine. So that was my topic for today, talking about being spiritually not good enough, feeling like that, but recognize you actually are, and your path is your path. You don't have to listen to other people. So I'm Colleen Vander Zyden. You can connect with me at ColleenVanderZyden.com or PsychicMediumColleen.com. Quick link, same place. Takes you there. Follow me on Facebook, Colleen Vander Zyden Medium and Intuitive Life Coach, and LilyDaleAssembly.org, Lily Dale Assembly Incorporated on Facebook. And thank you so much. Feel free to leave me comments, and I will respond to them as soon as I can. And we will have some more fun, and I will see you guys next week. You have fun. Bye.